This is the Leadership Podcast, and we study leaders. This is episode 513, featuring Nick Black, co-founder of GoodUnited and Stop Soldier Suicide. Thank you for joining us today. This is Javas Lopez, founder of Rafty Advisors, and this is the Leadership Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Jan Rutherford here, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for making us a part of your day as we study leaders. And you can find all our past episodes in our great catalog at theleadershippodcast.com.
And this episode is proudly sponsored by Darley, trusted by warfighters and firefighters since 1908. That's a long time. Darley is dedicated to equipping our military and first responders with the essential tools they need for mission success, from fuel and firefighting pumps to drones and tactical solutions and all kinds of other stuff that people need to keep us safe. Discover more about this incredible company and the people who serve our nation's heroes at Darley.com. That's DARLEY.com. Darley, you serve others, we serve you.
Thanks, Jim. And our guest today is Nick Black. He's the founder and CEO of GoodUnited, a messaging fundraising platform helping nonprofits raise over $1 billion. A former Army officer and co-founder of Stop Soldier Suicide, he is a presidential leadership scholar and UNC Distinguished Alumnus. And Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jen. Jim, I really appreciate it. Really looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, good. Hey, we gave you a heads up. What's not in the public bio?
I got an incredible wife named Amanda, 2 kids, 12 and 10 years old, Anna and Drew. And they love to make fun of me because I'm really good at Fortnite. Maybe because it's free and I get to play Saturday mornings. But, I try to take on these kids all across the world and I beat them. So I don't think anyone knows that. I think it's my only hobby.
Well, you better not reveal your code name then.
No, I don't even know what it is.
That's awesome. Well, we're really glad to have you on. And again, thanks for all your service and the ways you continue to serve. And that's been a commonality in many of our guests, that whatever they did in their past life, they continue to serve and make a difference in the lives of others. And I wanted to start with sort of your backstory, because that's pretty interesting, pretty cool. One, you grew up in Africa. Most kids in America didn't grow up in Africa. Thinking your folks worked for the State Department, and later learned they were CIA case officers.
It's true.
Better known as spies. How'd that revelation shape your understanding of service and secrecy and leadership?
Yeah, well, I think when you're growing up, you probably don't ask your parents too many questions about what they do.
Yeah.
And all I knew is that we were living all over Africa. We lived in 4 different countries. And then we moved to London for 4 years. We came back to the States so I could go to high school. My dad told me I got too big to play soccer, so it was time for me to start playing football. And when I was 15, my parents asked me, we went on our patio. It was winter, it was cold, and said, "We need something to tell you." And I had no idea what, they wanted to say. And my dad looked at me, very direct and very serious. He goes, "Nick, your mother and I don't work for the State Department." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "We work for the CIA." And I looked him dead in the eye. I said, "You're not cool enough to work for the CIA." And it was like that Homer Simpson moment when he's trying to choke Bart. So I think they worked up this whole narrative about how they were going to tell me. And then, as a 15-year-old might say, "Oh, okay." But it was the reason why they did it was my dad took a public position, and then they had I believe it was the first family weekend. So all the family members got to go to the agency and walk around, which I think was a really big deal for people that work there. So I never thought too much about the secrecy. I think it was more about service. So I knew my parents served the country. They're very patriotic. But then it, took on a different path. And my father was pretty involved in the counterterrorism. So growing up, we never talked about money. We never talked about bureaucracy. We never talked about business. We just talked about terrorists. So, that's what, they were working on. And, in hindsight, it really taught me a lot about where I came from and, some of my gaps today when I think about it. But I'm very proud of them and what they've done. And, it's kind of put me on a path of service and trying to take the path least traveled, take the hard road rather than the easy one, and continue to move forward.
Yeah. Sounds, your description of your dad telling you sounds like something you'd see in a movie.
Yeah.
Free Netflix show.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, which four countries in Africa?
Somalia, Zambia, South Africa, and then the former Zaire, not Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Oh, wow.
All the
Wow.
tourist hotspots outside of South Africa. Everywhere you want to go.
Wow. Which country did you like best?
Well, my parents liked South Africa the best. I enjoyed Zaire, Kinshasa. We lived on a compound, and my parents would try to give the local people as many jobs as possible. So it seemed like we had 20 people working at our house.
Yeah.
As a kid, I remember we might have been on 5 acres in downtown Kinshasa. We had a pool and jungle and monkeys and just an incredible time. So I got to run around with, sticks pretending they were guns, and I had a great time.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Like, now that you've kind of described this, what sounds like half the movies on Netflix right now, this reawakening of like, oh, wow, mom was in the CIA or something like that. That's just like hilarious in a way. But, once again, I thank them for their service. But, your story now is a little more familiar because you're like a lot of GWAT guys who, 9/11 happened during your senior year in high school
Sure.
and kind of, maybe influenced your decision to serve. Tell us how, like, that process, how you thought through that process, what was going on in your head, and also a little bit about, like, maybe the impact of knowing your parents' history affected you as well. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, sure. So I went to Langley High School, which was a mile away from Langley, the CIA. And I was the vice president of the school, and it was football season. And we had a big game that Friday. It was my senior year. I was fired up, ready to go. I initially was going to go to West Point and was being recruited to play football. Looked at a couple other places as well. But, that morning, the principal came down and knocked on the door of my classroom and asked to speak with me. His name was Bill Glenn Daniel. He was a Marine. And he goes, "Hey, Nick, I saw it on the TV. It was a biology class." He goes, "We have an issues. A lot of the kids, their parents worked at the agency or State Department or the Pentagon. So I need you to go around and keep everyone calm." And I walked around from class to class, talking to the different kids, right? Saying, "Hey, it's going to be okay." And we didn't evacuate. So for some reason, our school, a mile away from the agency, they didn't send the kids home. It was a normal day, but we sat there. And I was just pissed off. My dad, I didn't see him for 2 weeks. He was a pretty elevated position at the agency. He actually, helped lead the war in Afghanistan and the CIA's plan for our counterattack. It was that moment where I decided there's just a fire that was just lit, and I wanted to close with and destroy those guys. So I wish it was more like politically correct or, I don't know, calm or normal, but they ruined a lot for me. And I'll never forget people jumping out of the buildings. I'll never forget kids in the class crying. I'll never forget them worrying if their parents were alive or dead. So, that put me on a path. That was the first moment of my life where something happened, and it put me on a path saying, you know what, I want to join the military. I want to go in the Army. I want to be an airborne ranger. I was an offensive lineman. So, that was no, given task. Running was never my forte. Neither was pull-ups. I learned that the hard way too. But I ended up going to Johns Hopkins University. I got an Army ROTC scholarship, and I played football there as well. And we had some pretty incredible cadre there. One of them was a gentleman named Matt Eversman. So if you remember Black Hawk Down, the main character, this was like when Black Hawk Down came out. He was one of them, I don't know, like top 5 people on the planet when you think about it in the military. And he motivated me, kept me in, told me I was going to love the Army. And I did the 4 years and then commissioned from there. But 9/11 was a big deal. And I look back and I was at a cocktail party, like, I don't know, last year. And I was sitting on the couch, playing with the dog as, what I, do wherever I go. And someone came out to my wife and he goes, "Hey, what's the deal with Nick?" I guess she gets this a lot. She goes, "Well, things piss him off and he attacks them." So for me, it was 9/11. 9/11 caused me to go in the military. Having one of my guys take his own life caused me to get out of the military. Raising money for the nonprofit that I started caused me to have GoodUnited, and it all started at 9/11. And so that was the path that I started to go down.
Yeah. Obviously, you're talking about yourself in a way that says, like, hey, when I'm kind of, I see a challenge, I like jump into action. You know, put yourself back at that day when, the headmaster asked you to kind of go around and calm everyone down. You were fired up, probably a little bit angry, but you had to be the calming voice. Um, What allowed you to kind of play that role so well that day?
I think it was feeling accountable and responsible. So being in a position of leadership at the school, being the captain of the football team and just being, it's high school. It's your world, right? Your world's very small when you're in high school. When you're in senior high school, you think you're, the king of the world. And for me, I was, protecting my schools, talking to kids that were on the football team or in the school. And it was scary too. I didn't know what was going on. And I knew my parents were at the agency. I didn't know when I was going to see them again. And, it was just a surreal experience, as we all had, right? We all have those stories. And for me, I'll never, ever forget walking in those halls and they just clean. I don't know why. I always remember. But, like in the high schools, the floors are so clean and someone just waxed the floors. And I'll never forget I wore Timberland boots because I wanted to be 2 inches taller so I could be 6'5", right? So then I'll never forget my boots squeaking from door to door and being the only one in the hall, the only person, and then going from room to room, talking to the different kids. And it's just something that it plays in my mind a lot.
Wow. I was in DC when that happened, Nick. It was a significant event. And what I remember most is the people I was with thought we were going to be flying home the next day. Like, we are not flying home. And
Right.
I remember, I won't go into the whole story, but I just remember thinking, there's more stuff coming. That's all I kept thinking was there's
Right.
more stuff coming.
Yeah, we had no idea, right? Planes were in the air.
Yeah.
No one knew.
But you and I probably weren't very many miles apart on that day. That's
Probably
kinda
not.
small world. So you were deployed a total of 27 months combat. You transitioned out of the Army. You founded Stop Soldier Suicide. Can you give us the story, the impetus that really
Yeah,
got
sure.
you on that path?
I was very fortunate. I got assigned to the 173rd Airborne base out of Vicenza, Italy.
Which is
And I was
very
very,
prestigious,
yeah,
hard
it
to
was
get
great.
in. Yeah.
And it was just with some of the greatest warriors and Americans that our country has, and really set me, the bar for my life is really trying to chase the dragon of feeling that kind of camaraderie, being around that type of talent, that type of mission. But when I was assigned to the 173rd, and there's a whole backstory on this, I failed pre-ranger at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We start off with 80 guys, ended up with 7, and I actually failed pull-ups. And so I had my ranger school slot. I couldn't go, and my unit said, "We'll just come right out to Afghanistan." And so I was the only officer without a ranger tab in my first deployment. Ended up going afterwards, and it's a story with that as well. But I showed up, and I was put in attack company, ACO 1503. And the day I was there, they were in a firefight, one platoon against like 80 guys on the border of Pakistan. And we were in the mountains in eastern Afghanistan, but there was this flat area. I remember just hearing on the radio, and I was like, I got 15 months of this. Like, this is not going to be a cakewalk. And I showed up, and we were completely isolated, 120 guys in the middle of nowhere. No one could drive to us. They'd have to, drop food supplies and ammo in from aircraft. And we're at Fob Tillman, named after the football player, Pat Tillman. And we fought weekly. We had rockets weekly. We got after it a lot. And our company and the 173rd in that deployment in 07, 08, I believe we were the only company that didn't have anyone killed in action. We had a couple of our soldiers that had transferred to different companies that were killed. One, Josh Blaney, who was just incredible NCO. And 2 weeks before we came home, we were pushed into this mountain range at a place called Sparacop. And we had about a platoon plus element. We had an OP of 15 guys and then about 20 guys at the bottom. And the OP was 400 meters vertical. I bring this up because that morning it sounded like popcorn going off, but I walked outside and the entire ridgeline that we were in the middle of nowhere was lit up by machine gun fire and RPGs. And the OP, the enemy, were trying to run through it. So we got into a firefight. And usually, as anyone that's been in combat, in Afghanistan at least, you can survive the first like 15 seconds of them ambushing you. Like, you're okay, right? Very rarely do they stay on station and they want to fight it out. These guys were on station, not just to fight, but try to overrun us. And so we fought. I put in a gentleman for the Medal of Honor. He got the Distinguished Service Cross, named Jack White, who led the defense on that OP. And I think we had 3 Bronze Stars of Valor, and everyone got ARCOMs. And the reason I bring this up is that a week later was Wanat. I believe we lost 9 soldiers. in the 173rd and 2nd Battalion. And 2 weeks later, we were back in Italy seeing all the coffins come back. And a week after that, one of my soldiers that was in that battle spare cop took his life. So I don't really know what to do with that. I get pissed off thinking about it. But we made it through 15 months of Afghanistan, and then we had a guy take his own life. So a year later, I went back to Afghanistan. I got a good email from a buddy of mine from undergrad named Brian Kinsella. And it was an article, I believe, from the New York Times, and it said that we lost more service men and women to suicide than we had killed in action. And that was the second moment of my life where it just put me in a different direction. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we were killing ourselves at a greater clip than the enemy could imagine. I couldn't believe that I dedicated my 20s to closing with and destroying these guys, and we were killing ourselves. Something was wrong. So I decided to get out of the military. I took the GMAT in Afghanistan. I bombed it. Somehow got into UNC Business School. I think I had the second lowest score in our class in the GMAT. They let me in. I think they had to let in like 10 eggheads to allow me to go. But along the way, started Stop Soldier Suicide. So that was the path that we went on. And since then, unfortunately, of that first company of 120 men, I think we've lost 12 to suicide.
Yeah, it's sobering. Nick, tell me, I'm going to be with a group next week, and it's a week-long thing. It's a great company, and one of the sessions is going to be on stress and burnout and mental health and all that, and I'm going to help facilitate it. What have you learned, not just about soldier suicide, but just mental health in general? Because that's what you've had to have learned a ton about if you're learning about suicide, you're learning about mental health, what good looks like, what the precursors are. For the leaders out there listening, let's give them the straight to what they need to be looking for. What kind of environment do they need to be creating?
Isolation is your enemy. Never ever allow yourself to get isolated. Never allow yourself to sit in a room with your thoughts. Never allow yourself to start going down a path. I've lost too many of my guys where it's the same story. They get something bad happens, they isolate, alcohol, firearm, bad things happen. For me, it's about having a peer group. Even though I don't see my friends in the military a lot, they're some of the most qualified and capable people on the planet. Most of them Ivy League officers, some of the greatest warriors. And having that peer group, having that camaraderie still, to me, I think is very, very important, especially for veterans getting out and transitioning. We all go our own ways. We all go to different companies. We go to different businesses. But you have to have that peer group where you can speak plainly. They can hold you accountable. They can make fun of you, right? Just like we had in the military. And, that to me is a absolute vital lifeline in being able to, one, look at myself in the mirror, but two, have people that I respect and trust to be able to be that feedback loop and feedback mechanism. I think if you don't have that, then bad things can go.
Let me ask you this. So there's a balance. I mean, I'm with you 1,000% peer group. Don't isolate. At the same time, when we talk about leadership development, we talk a lot about, hey, you got to create white space. You need time to reflect, to increase your self-awareness. You need to think. How do you balance that time you need alone to reflect, meditate, think, plan, design, with the fact that you don't want to be too isolated? How do you provide guidance on that?
I think it's about finding people that have been there before. As I tell people, I have no idea what to do, but I seemingly have a PhD in what not to do. So for me, I know myself pretty well. I know when I need to take a step back or take a knee. I think a lot of the traits that were successful in the military can sometimes be counter, intuitive or against you, right? Perseverance. I think it's also, for me at least, working on things that are meaningful and give me a purpose and passion. I don't do well when I don't have a target or a mission to try to accomplish. So having that purpose and passion allows me to align myself and to move forward. And maybe the most importantly is that if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're not being honest with yourself. And I don't think many people are going to follow you. So try not to take things too seriously. And that's what I loved about the military. One of my commanders, Matt McFarland, he's a 3-star now. And I learned so much about leadership from him, and he was brilliant. And in the most tense moments, tense moments, he would look at me and he would, "Hey, Nick, you want Twizzler?" right? And I would sit there and like, what? And he had this ability to be able to just cut the tension and to
Wow.
be able to level set because you never want to get too high, too low. So I learned so much so much from military leaders like him about how to make sure that
Mm.
you're always being even and you never get too
Yeah.
high, too low. And so I try to think about that a lot.
Yeah, some great commentary on being secure enough to get made fun of as far as camaraderie.
Oh yeah. I don't really know anyone that I think is a good leader that doesn't laugh at themselves or at least knows the joke about
Yeah,
themselves.
that's right.
Because I think, laughter brings a lot of levity, and I think it also aligns people, lets you know they're human,
Yeah.
and also family and bringing that into the fold as well. That none of us are robots.
Yeah. Hey, before I throw it back over to Jim real quick to our audience, you guys know our sponsor is a family-owned business based in the Midwest and has been a trusted partner to the U.S. military, which we're talking about, and first responders for over a century. From mission-critical defense equipment to innovative firefighting solutions, Darley ensures our heroes are equipped for success. And you can learn more about this great company and their people at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com.
Hey, Nick, I don't know if you've covered this already, but if it was when you got back to Italy and learned of, a soldier committing suicide, but talk to us a little bit about the moment when you kind of understood the difference between leading people and taking care of people, that kind of delicate balance and how they're different responsibilities.
Yeah, they beat into you pretty early on. Mission first, people always. And I always thought that was an interesting dichotomy where you have to make decisions where people are going to die. And unfortunately, I've had made decisions where Americans were killed, and it is a balance. I think ensuring that everyone's aligned towards the mission is important and realizing that the only way that you're going to get there is your people are aligned, motivated, and they're ready to move forward. So if you can take care of people, then you can get the mission. I've yet to find anyone that accomplished the mission without people. I think in the military, it's kind of straightforward. I think the civilian sector, it's a lot harder because you might not have that mission alignment. You know, everyone in the military knows where everyone else makes. You're aligned on a team, right, towards a common goal. In the civilian world, I think it's difficult to be able to align taking care of a person and then focusing on the bottom line of profit. So I'm still learning how to do that, but I think that the military taught me a lot about the only way that you're going to get to the mission is empowering your people and elevating them to be able to, exceed more than they ever thought they could.
Yeah. I mean, I love your commentary earlier about, the leadership levity and how to keep an even keel that you learned in the military. What's something you've learned now that you have been outside the military that you said, wow, this is maybe the most important thing I've learned outside the military from a leadership perspective from, corporate America per se?
I think it's about understanding where your people come from. And while going to the military, I thought most of it was the dumbest thing I've ever been through and the dumbest thing anyone's ever created. But in hindsight, it's brilliant. And you also underestimate that. And I had my business partner told me this. And I'd get very frustrated about some of the people that we hired and their performance. And one day he pulled me aside and he goes, "Hey, man, tell me about what it was like to get their unit." And I said, "I don't know what that means." He goes, "Well, what hurdles did you have to get through?" And when you think about it, you have to join the military. You have to volunteer for Army. You have to volunteer for infantry. You have to go to airborne. You have to get a ranger tab. You have to make it to the 173rd Airborne. And every one of those hurdles is training, right? And being able to understand different languages and being on the same page. In the civilian sector, not a lot of our peers have been through any structured methodology, training, or thinking. And so for me, what I've learned is that it's really important to understand where they come from, what they've been exposed to, because I can build planning all day. I can build strategies all day. It's not for me, it's for them. But what's the point? I need to understand where they've been through and be able to align a bunch of people that come from that have no common background. They've never been through structured training. So to me, that was one of the big eye-opening moments of realizing that we don't have anything. We have to build that. We have to invest into our people and we have to get everyone on the same page. It has to be simple. You have to say it a million times over. but always try to understand where people have come from and how they think about the problem.
Yeah. One of the things that's really unique about, the military and maybe even professional athletes versus, let's say, the working world is, you have cycles where you're, on station, you're deployed, and then you're back in some kind of training or refitting, condition. And the business world, you're just kind of like working all the time.
Sure.
And so I think by its very nature, that makes training a lot harder.
Right.
What's your approach to kind of bring the best of both worlds together?
I think it's about milestones. So rallying people to achieve something, whether it's time-based or an outcome, but making sure that we break up the monotony of just showing up to work with goals. How do we break it into certain missions? How do we celebrate the wins? How do we start to really be able to compartmentalize the segment, right? To be able to break down big problems into manageable goals. And I think it's also being able to cross-level information. It's amazing to me that a marketer doesn't understand what a salesperson might do, but even more so sales versus engineering. How do we cross-level, right? How do we be able to learn? I always thought one thing the military did well was cross-functional training. Everyone needs to understand at a basic level everyone else's job. Well, that also being able to understand where people are coming from and get things going. So you don't just get into a rut. You don't just focus on what you have to do. You can understand what the people on the left and right have and how they rely on you.
Yeah. Nick, you were, talking about the hurdles or the barriers, the things, the gates that you had to go through, to get to different places in the military. And we know that one of the most important things a leader does is to select and hire. And the
Sure.
other one is retain and develop. But the thing in the middle is the onboarding, the
Right.
welcoming, how we do that. And on the show, we had someone on before that said, in one particular company, the manager would spend a full week with someone when the first week they're on board. A full week, they would handle all the paperwork, the HR stuff. They would do everything, but they were with that person 40 hours. It's not realistic in
Right.
most organizations, but in most organizations, it is. Here's your computer. Here's the benefit forms. Oh, yeah, here's the values on the website. But there's no sort of indoctrination, no expectation setting about how we treat people with dignity and respect or what you don't let your peers down. There's none of that inculcation.
Right.
When you went from building a nonprofit to what you're doing with Good United,
Sure.
what were, the things that translated that helped you, really build on it? Because not everybody's going to relate to sports language or military language or any of that stuff.
Well, I feel like I've really earned my PhD on this one on failure and what not to do. So what I've learned in the simplest sense is find the highest quality people that have shown production over potential at every step, that have taken the road less traveled, that have always taken the harder path, and put them around other people like themselves. That's it. I
Huh.
have done the detailed onboarding, long onboarding, short onboarding. But if you can find a core group of A talent and you hold that up, you make that part of your culture. You bring it up a lot. This is us, right? We want to build. We want to build slowly. We want to find the right people. We want to find 10 people that can do the work of 100. We want to be able to drive outcomes. We want to reward you for those outcomes. There's no greater trainer than I found of finding that core group, whether it start with 2 or 3 and then 9, and then empowering that group to hold the standard with anyone else coming in the door.
You said people that take the hard route. Where my mind went when you said that was somebody that paid their own way through college and worked their butt off. That's hard.
100%.
But what are other examples of the hard route that you could, as you look at a resume and you go, oh, this stands out?
To me, it's anything. The worst job I ever had was being president of my fraternity. By far, not even close, right? So,
Yeah.
like, what might seem like a very simple and stupid thing is actually your peers have selected you to lead them. You don't get paid for this. It's
Yeah.
an awful job. Did you step up? Did you do anything, right? The opposite side is that did you just sit on your ass and watch TV? Or did you try? Did you join a club? Have you done anything? Have you experienced any adversity? do you want to sit down and comfort, or you don't need to go be an Army Ranger. You don't need to go be, go to Yale, but show me how you got out of your comfort zone and took something on and you succeeded and you didn't quit. It could be anything, but you got to show that.
Let me ask you, this is on track, but a little off track. You mentioned you were on O-lineman.
Yeah.
It's a long story. I love football. Long story. I won't go into it. But I've always believed the smartest guys on the team are the offensive line.
Well,
And
I know I like you.
we've had a couple, pro football. One pro football player. What was his name?
We've had a couple. Corey Proctor, Dallas Cowboy.
Corey
and
from
then
the
we had,
Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
All smart, thoughtful. Is it smart guys go on the O-line, or does the O-line make you smart and see the world differently? Is there something that happened on that O-line that makes you guys different?
I think none of the girls would talk to us. We had nothing else to do than learn a sport, right? So I don't know. I think that offensive line, and for me, especially as a young man, I think it taught me a lot. Football did a lot for me because it was the first time in my life there were consequences. If I don't have a block, then someone gets hurt. And I think that changes the entire spectrum, right, of what it is to be a team, what it is to be a part of something. And the offensive line, in high school, I think I touched a football twice. So what does that mean, right? And if I'm MVP of the team and captain of the team and I never touched the football, then what is that? And you're the biggest guy. Are you going to set the standard? Are you going to allow your little guys to get pushed around? And so I think offensive line, and there's 5 of you, or defensive line, you're the majority of the team and no one ever talks about you. So there's something about that camaraderie, that in the trenches and, never getting a touchdown, never catching a pass, that allows you to maybe take the game at a different level. I mean, for me, I took it very seriously that I understood what was happening because I didn't want to get anyone hurt. And I never played football before. When I came from Europe, I was a soccer player and I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember I missed a block and our quarterback got absolutely smoked. So I better learn the plays. If you run a route wrong, like, who cares? If you forget a block, everyone remembers.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you looking out for the little guys as a little guy.
I did my best. I didn't play very much in college, but I did my best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's kind of a theme in what you're saying. Like, you have felt this responsibility to protect. You felt this responsibility to, step up, and whether it was in your fraternity or whether it was, captain your team, or even in high school to kind of step up and contribute. You've obviously just grew up in a life of service. Understanding that it's kind of embedded in who you are at your very core. How has your understanding of service changed over time as you've served in many different capacities? And, what would encourage other people to maybe follow in your steps, that might not have had all the influences that you've had?
I think it's about your passions. I think it's about what I try to tell my kids is that our whole goal, my wife and I, is to give them enough opportunities to find what they're passionate about. And what you'll often find is to be passionate about other people, to be passionate about a cause. And if you have the courage to be able to pursue that passion, you'll be successful. And so for me, I've never made a decision off of money. Sometimes I wish I had. I've never made a decision of, let's go on vacation or hang out. It's about being passionate about the problem. And I've been very fortunate where I've gotten the opportunity to pursue it. Went to a great high school. I had the opportunity to go to a great college and meet wonderful people. And, the more times you show up, the more times you have the right attitude, the more opportunities you'll have to find that passion. So you're not going to find service unless you get out there and find a reason why. What's your why? Is it dogs? Is it homelessness? Is it whatever, right? But you got to show up. So go find your passion and then go serve it. For me, it was kind of linear from the military to stop sort of suicide. But, I also love the country. Why? Because I grew up overseas, and every day my dad would say, "You represent the United States of America, act accordingly." Every time we got on a plane, "You represent the United States of America. So do it."
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. Your why kind of changed through the years. what your passion, I guess, but like it had a thematic element. Is there any why that you've got, any driving passion you've got that just doesn't align aside from Fortnite?
I want to find new passions. I think that I've been focusing on the problems I'm trying to solve for, and I want to be able to explore more. We have an incredible international team from the Philippines to Colombia to Serbia to Pakistan. And for me, the thing I think about now is what am I not being exposed to that I might fall in love with to solve for next? And I'm really excited to solve for the two problems that I have in front of me. And I'm going to give it everything I've got. But I'm also excited for finding out what's next. So I think for better or worse, I'm pretty laser focused on what I have today, Jim. But I also see with that narrow focus, a wider vision of excited for what's that next thing that's going to piss me off. So hopefully it's something, worth doing.
Well, you don't have teenagers yet.
Yet. No, I don't. But my kids have been incredible. It's been unbelievable to watch them grow. I talked to a gentleman, I was at a conference this weekend in Baltimore, and, we came to the conclusion that, no one in parents knows what they're doing, but we all give it our best. So there's so much we can learn from each other on how we're trying to navigate that seemingly impossible scenario.
Yeah. Hey, I'd love, as we close out the show, and again, it's been a real pleasure having you on, Nick. I'd love for you to offer a sort of two-pronged. One closing thought on leadership in general, and a closing thought on mental health in general.
I thought about this when you sent me the email before, Jan, and when in doubt, lead the way. That has yet to steer me wrong. And maybe it's just beaten into me through Ranger School.
Mm-hmm.
But when in doubt, lead the way. And whenever there's a dark moment, whenever there's a question, whenever there's a void, whenever there's a moment, whenever there's a question, whenever there's, there's silence, lead the way. Set the example. Simple, but powerful. In regards to mental health, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I don't know who said it, right? But you don't know what other people are going through, what's going through their shoes. And I have had the honor to serve with some of America's greatest warriors, and they are not weak. These are not men that were weak that took their lives. You never know what someone's going through, and give that friend a call. If it's your strongest friend, your weakest friend, give them a call. Let them know you're still in the game. Let them know you're still in your corner.
Yeah.
Great advice.
This is a powerful and great episode. And, I just want to let you know, I love your sense of humor. I think you're a fun guy to be around. Thank you.
Well, we got to get you down to Charleston. We'll go out and have a good time.
It sounds like fun. That's fun. For our listeners, that's all we have for you this week. We'll include ways for you to connect with Nick in our show notes, so make sure to visit us at theleadershippodcast.com. And remember, the secret is not to give up hope. It's very hard not to, because if you're really doing something worthwhile, I think you'll be pushed to the brink of hopelessness before you come through the other side. George Lucas.
Well said.
It's a wrap, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Podcast. To listen to more shows or to access the books and content discussed on this show, be sure to visit theleadershippodcast.com. The material in this podcast is copyright by Rafti Advisors and Self-Reliant Leadership and must have written approval before commercial application.